Hey guys, welcome back to Dwell Big. I'm sitting on a travel trailer right now just to hopefully get a little bit better audio, but I just recently finished installing the Andersen no sway weight distribution hitch system. And after doing a lot of research, it really stood out to me over all of the other ones on the market, mostly just due to the simplicity, the overall engineering and design, and the quality also seemed to be exceptionally high. You know, when I was looking at criteria for which one to buy, which one I wanted, one of the biggest ones was performance, obviously, quality, but one of the biggest things I was looking for was, the simplicity of the overall system as far as hooking up, as far as unhooking, and I also really wanted to be able to back into a site without having to stop and raise the tongue jack and take bars off and everything before you even get to the step of backing in. That just didn't seem particularly pleasant to me. And I don't know that this is the only system that allows for that, but this system certainly allows for even very sharp maneuvering into your spot. Additionally, I have heard a lot of the tension systems and torsion bars and things cause a lot of noise, like the friction type of systems. And supposedly this one is supposed to be like very silent. It's supposed to take out a lot of the bounce, obviously take out the sway and weight distribute as it should. So it seems, I dare say, too good to be true. But in this video, I want to kind of go over the install. I don't really want to do a particular step-by-step how-to on the install. They have great videos for that. Their installation guide is actually phenomenally good. But I do want to cover some issues I ran into on the install and my overall perception from the the unboxing to to doing the overall install, and then how I think it's going to hold up, perform, etc. So I got a little bit of a cheat sheet here just to cover some of the specs on the particular one that I got. They've got a lot of configurations, but I got what I'm assuming is probably the most common configuration. So it's a 2 5/16 inch ball. I think they have at least a 2-inch size, maybe even another size available. But it is the 4-inch drop rise shank. They have an 8-inch available. I don't think I needed that for my rig. We'll cover where that ended up later, but I think for most half tons, unless you're drastically lifted or you're going to be dealing with a ton of squat, you're probably good with a 4-inch drop rise shank. And then I got the 3 to 6-inch adjustable frame brackets. So they don't really make specific sizes, kind of like a one-size-fits-all. This particular travel trailer was a 6-inch, so it barely fit. It was on the biggest setting, but it certainly fit just fine. And then it is a 2-inch shank since I've got a half-ton truck. The specs on this one, as it's set up, the total weight of everything is actually less than 60 pounds. I forgot to mention it earlier. That was kind of a big thing for me, as I didn't really want to mess with these massive, heavy torsion bars and all these wrenches and components and everything that you need. So everything, the whole box of everything weighed less than 60 pounds, which is incredible compared to really any other one out there. It has a 14,000 GTWR and a 1,400 pound max ton weight. Which is rather impressive, again, looking at other options, and it's way above what I needed for this particular setup. And they don't really have, unlike the torsion bars where you have to get like the right set for your weight, these are all just based on the max. So it's not like they make one that's for like a 1,200 pound ton weight or a 1,000 pound ton weight. They just go up to a 1,400 pound max, and everything below that is good to go with that. So, some of the features, I touched on some of these that drew me toward it, but some of the features are, it's obviously weight distribution and sway control built in, and a really awesome design for how that works we'll get into here shortly. The ball is included. One really awesome thing is it doubles as a standard 2 5/16 inch ball if you take all the weight distribution pieces off of it, so you can still tow just a standard trailer with it. That is not really a selling point on a lot of the other weight distribution hitches. We already touched on the ability to back up without having to remove parts or adjust anything. Lifetime warranty, 100% made in the USA, which is big to me, and I know that's big to a lot of people, but they're claiming 100% USA made, so that's pretty awesome. Silent, no sway, and no bounce, which is pretty cool. It's got these some kind of like a plastic bushing that basically reduces some of the bounce as you're crossing overpasses or things along those lines. It's also a grease-free system, so that's pretty cool compared to a lot of the other ones, meaning this thing is completely maintenance-free. And then claims to be easy to install, and then it is basically a really fast unhitching system. So not only do you not have to unhitch to back in, or disconnect the sway control portion or weight distribution to back into your spot, but once you're there and you're trying to unhook, the process of unhooking is very simple. You simply raise the tongue jack up until the chains are loose, and there's a single pin to pull out, and then the coupler drops off that holds the weight distribution chains on. Alright, so the setup specific here, and again, this is a pretty generic system that's going to match a lot of rigs, a lot of sizes of trucks, going up to 1,400 pound tongue weight, 14,000 pound, towing weight. It's going to cover a lot of setups, but just in case you're curious of what we're specifically using, this is a 2020 Aspen Trail 2851 BHS, and it has a dry weight of about 6,700 pounds and a dry hitch weight or dry tongue weight of about 710 pounds. I'm going to guess completely loaded. I don't have a ton loaded toward the front, but with propane, battery, a little bit of cargo that's going to be shifted toward the front, maybe an 800 pound hitch weight, give or take. And then the tow vehicle is a 2020 Toyota Tundra Crew Max. It is a TRD, so it's got a little bit lesser of a payload, but we're still very close to within specs on payload and certainly within towing for the Tundra. For my particular setup, I needed to put the shank in the rise position, and I actually needed to put the ball in the farthest up position, and I believe that got everything sitting very level and the way it should be configured or sitting. So I really wanted to cover my initial thoughts. This is a part 1 video. I have not towed with this yet. I have towed this trailer with the Tundra with no weight distribution or sway control setup whatsoever. So now I'm kind of curious to know, I won't really, I guess, be able to fairly compare it to other systems, but does this system check off everything it supposedly does? Does it remove balance? Does it weight distribute well? Does it remove sway? And more importantly, is it as easy to take on and off and back and everything else as it claims to? But what I do want to touch on is a little bit about the overall quality, just the unboxing and things along those lines. And the first thing I need to touch on is that this system is $550, which weirdly that's almost in the middle of the road, if you will. That's a nice weight distribution system, but that's not the high end. There are weight distribution systems that range in the $900 range. There's also ones that go down to like $250, $200. So I'd say it's definitely expensive. It is a hard pill to swallow for a cost. Trust me, with how expensive everything else is for these travel trailers or just camping in general. It's one of those things that's hard to do when it doesn't really necessarily benefit much except just your overall towing comfort and safety. But if you are going to spend the money, $550 is a lot of money to be anything less than perfectly happy with it. I'm going to obviously form my full opinion once I have towed with it, set it up, tore it down maybe a few times, but just purely initially, I was maybe an 8 out of 10 happy with it. It includes, for 2 different pieces, 2 of these regular hitch pins, and the cotter pin, or whatever it's called, their hairpin that goes in the end of this. It was actually missing both of those in my packaging. Luckily, all of the important parts were there. All of the, Andersen, specific pieces for the system were in the packaging, but it was supposed to include them, and the 2 pins for this were missing. Not a huge deal. I had some. If I didn't, they're like $5, but it's kind of annoying when you're paying $550 for such a system. Secondly, their package, they did due diligence to package, but it could have been better because there's a lot of like painted or coated pieces that were pretty roughed up by the time it got to me. So again, very minor complaints. The fact of the matter is, everything does feel really heavy duty, really high quality. It did all install well, and I think overall it is an awesome design and going to be a good system with good longevity. But, you know, initial thoughts are kind of everything when you just paid $550 for a system. Your first impression is really important, and mine was slightly less than perfect. So take that for what it is. But all the important pieces were there. Everything did go together correctly. And as far as the install goes, there was very little that I ran into as far as issues are concerned. One thing that was very specific to this trailer only was I had to move my breakaway cable connector, breakaway brake connector, and it was just in the way of the driver's side bracket that needs to go in the frame of the trailer. And that was pretty simple to move, and luckily that was the only thing in the way. No battery boxes or propane tanks or nothing else was in the way. So that was a very simple, easy thing to take care of. Installation was simple overall. Did take a little bit of time, a little bit more time than I expected. You know, you gotta have some pretty sizable tools to work with stuff. You need an 1 1/8" socket and wrench, and then you also need a 5/15/16" socket and wrench for 2 different things. They do include, it's a weird little socket that they like milled in-house, but it's this neat little socket for actually adjusting your tension on both sides. And so it's kind of neat that they included that. It's also pre-marked on it, which is pretty nice, because there's a point where you need to do, you know, 4 rotations exactly per side. So it's nice to be able to keep track of that and mark your rotations out. Overall, so far, again, this is only part 1. Time's going to tell. I would give it an 8 out of 10 so far. Once we get on the road, if it performs as good as it claims to, I might bump that up to a 9 or a 9.5 out of 10. One other really interesting feature is the shank comes with 2 holes in it. On my particular truck, the furthest hole, or the one that causes the ball to be the furthest from the bumper, actually gives you enough clearance. Now, granted, I've only tried it straight on. I assume if I'm at any kind of angle, it's probably not going to work so well. But it just allows enough clearance for my tailgate to drop without hitting the tongue jack. So that's pretty awesome. That's what that one's there for. That's why in the install you see me use that one. You could certainly use the second one in. Luckily, even with that furthest out one, it didn't cause me to have to extend safety chains or breakaway cables. It was just far enough to be able to get the tailgate closed. So that's pretty awesome. Or open and closed. So that's kind of a, not a selling point, but it's just a cool, you know, interesting added feature that they did, but they certainly didn't have to. So I apologize for not going through the very individual steps on this. Like I said, they've got plenty of videos out there, their documentation and instructions. If you just want to pull up or download their manual, it basically, with really awesome pictures and details and guides, takes you through every single step of the way. The only confusing part on the installation you've got to pay attention to, I wish they would really make it a little more bold and focused as you go, is just the different times that your tongue jack has to be in different positions. So there's one part where you want it barely sitting on the ball. There's one part where you want it latched to the ball and picked up like an inch or 2. There's one part where you want all of the weight down on the ball. And, you know, and then what you're doing in between those steps can be affected if you didn't follow that and put it in the right rise or drop position. So they detail that out in the manual, but it takes a little bit of time to double check and keep making sure that you didn't miss an instruction and you've got the, you know, hitch on the trailer sitting where you, at the height that you need it to be sitting. I think that pretty well covers everything I wanted to cover on this part 1 video for this hitch system. We are going on our first trip with it here shortly, which will be a lot of highway driving, interstate driving actually. So I'll be interested to report back and see exactly how it performed, and, you know, update my thoughts and rating and opinion on it at that point in time. I don't foresee any issues. I may not have the system perfectly fine-tuned or tweaked. I'm on gravel here, to be fair, and it's not perfectly level, so there's a good chance I might have to stop someplace and make some adjustments, but they make it really easy to do that. And I'll definitely have it adjusted or fine-tuned by the time we make the return trip home. So I should have a pretty good feel for how everything's riding and working, and whether this sway control system is worth the $550, or if you might want to look at some other systems. If you guys have any additional information, feel free to drop it down below. If you see that I did anything wrong or anything, you know, that you need to catch people on, obviously feel free to comment that below. And hopefully this helped somebody. Like I said, I apologize for not doing a full video. Some of it was because of audio, some of it was because of just some other issues, but hopefully something in this was helpful. And if nothing else, please come back for part 2, where I will do a full review on this, including towing and towing footage, and just how this whole system works, and specifically with this setup. Thank you guys. As always, dwell big wherever you are. Thanks.